welcome to a special edition of WMAR 2 News. I'm Mallory Safaste.
And I'm Skylar Henry. Here at WMAR 2 News, we are committed to working for you, and part of that is celebrating Black History Month. We're on the campus of Bowie State University, the oldest historically black college here in Maryland.
And we're here bridging the gap, celebrating the history makers of the past and those making history today. We begin with Judge Elizabeth Morris.
Yeah, the Honorable Elizabeth Morris is the first black woman to serve on the Anne Arundel County Circuit Court. While a fictional character may be the reason why she got into law in the first place, she's now proud to be an inspiration for those who may want to follow in her footsteps one day.
I wanted to be a lawyer from I was 8 years old. I had a really strong desire to be a lawyer. Once I saw actually Claire Huxtable on television.
And if you don't get it together and drop these macho attitudes, you are never gonna have anybody bringing you anything, anywhere, any place, anytime, ever.
And that was a perfect example of someone who was outspoken. As a child, I was very outspoken. I actually was reminded how outspoken I was when I was sharing with my daughter a progress report that I found from when I was 4.5 years old. From preschool. She knows her ABCs, she takes a nap, and then the last line was that Elizabeth tends to get into other people's affairs and will correct people, even adults. And that's basically what summarizes me as a child, and really as an adult. I grew up with an immigrant working class family. My family came from Jamaica, and everybody worked hard. You know, there wasn't a lot of money. We didn't socialize with lawyers. So as a child, I didn't know even what that was until I saw that image on television, and it made such a dramatic impact on me. And then I start to really just learn about the law and everything that it entailed from a perspective of a child. And it really just influenced me, and it just became a passion of mine. And it stayed with me through my entire education. It was my goal that I drove toward my entire life. At the end of April, 3 different people came up to me and encouraged me to apply. I was really happy at the agency. I worked at NSA at the time. I was happy. So I really didn't think about going onto the bench. I had aspirations to go onto the bench, but I saw that as something I would do later in my career. But people encouraged me to do it. It frankly never occurred to me that I would be the first. So I went through this entire process not giving it much thought. And then once I was appointed, it was a really humbling experience because I had strangers come up to me and just with the pride that's usually reserved for family members in their eyes, just telling me genuinely from a very sincere place how proud of me they are. And I'm happy to have an impact where, unlike me, where I had to rely on fictional characters, that people can see and children can see me, and hopefully that'll inspire them to pursue their dreams. My daughter is really, it was interesting. She did not understand the historic piece in the best possible way because she goes, "Mom, everyone keeps saying that you're the first. And I don't understand that because I've met your friends who are multiple women, black judges, and I don't understand why you're the first." And for me, that was just such a wonderful moment that my daughter is growing up in a world where diversity is a natural thing. And of course, there's judges who are black, who are Hispanic. So it's a wonderful thing for her where it's not a big deal to her. And that, to me, is my hope for the future, that we get to the point where they stop being first.
Along with Judge Morris making history, we also met with a young man in Pennsylvania who decided to become the change he wanted to see.
Yeah, after a couple of negative run-ins with the law, Hanif Johnson decided it was time to step up and step in.
I've been arrested 3 times, so a lot of the times I felt like I wasn't given a fair opportunity. A lot of times when I was looking over at someone, it was someone that didn't look like me. They weren't from my area. They didn't understand what happens in my area. So it was like I felt like it was like an unfair perspective in a sense.
That short time behind bars was enough to set Hanif Johnson on a path to become the youngest judge in Pennsylvania by the age of 27. Years of being falsely accused showed him the need for someone like him to take the bench.
I think to a lot of people, they look and say, oh, this guy's too young. And then those who said that I was too young, I made sure that I came back and I had a conversation with them about 4 or 5 times. And then on that, 4th or 5th time, they was able to see, okay, this guy, knows some things. Because I can go into a job, someone can be there for 20 years, they can be 30 years older than me, but that doesn't necessarily that they know more than me.
A self-described hyperactive child, always full of energy and always eager to learn, Johnson credits a large portion of his success to his connection with his community.
I was in a position where I was blessed and I was able to accomplish things. So when I see, little kids that look like me, it just motivates me a lot. To just see them and it's like, no, like come with me, like you need to do good. I check on them. It's times where I see kids running around in my neighborhood or even walking around. I always pull them to the side. What are you doing with yourself? Old school mentality. You're doing something wrong, I'm gonna say something to you. Then I might tell your parents on you too.
Outside of the courthouse, Johnson, a star athlete in high school and college, splits his free time between his 2 loves, his family and track.
I have a guy that's he's better win a state championship. He broke my school record. I coached him, so that was neat. I have 2 beautiful kids. I have a daughter, she's 3, and a son that's 1. And I even let them come in here sometimes. My daughter loves coming here. Daddy, can I go to your job with you just a little bit?
Judge Johnson is a young man who believes the sky is the limit, not just for himself, but for all of those he comes in contact with.
I just tell him all the time, don't let nobody tell you can't do something. And even when you have that little kid that say, I want to be in the NBA, or I want to be in the NFL, or I want to be a rapper, I always ask them, well, what are you doing to do that? Are you taking extra shots? Are you studying film? Are you writing anything? So I just, encourage them. Because you never know. You never know.
When it comes to Black history in Maryland, it's really not hard to find phenomenal stories. We met with a group in Havre de Grace who managed to reclaim a piece of their own history by preserving the Havre de Grace Colored School. The Havre de Grace Colored School was built in 1910 in a community without much racial tension, but still segregated under Harford County law.
The white and the blacks got along very well because we used to stay in each other's houses and play baseball.
But you couldn't go to school together.
But we couldn't go to the school.
So that was the interesting thing about it. They could play together. They stayed at each other's homes. They could eat at each other's dinner table. They just simply couldn't go to school together.
Couldn't go.
The school was the first grammar school for African American children during a time when African Americans could only get an 8th grade education in Harford County.
And children had to leave. Parents, if they had money, they would send their children maybe to live with relatives and maybe even as far away as Philadelphia, going to Baltimore, other places, in order that the children could get a high school education.
In 1930, a PTA led by Clayton Stansberry fought to give Black students in Havre de Grace a high school education. By 1950, a 12th grade class was added, along with the opportunity to earn a high school diploma and go on to college.
When the law came, Brown versus the Board of Education, Mr. Willis, who was the superintendent at that time, that's when he decided to build the 2 consolidated schools. They said separate but equal. So his attempt was to make the equal 2 equal schools.
After students were moved to the consolidated schools and later the integrated schools, the Havre de Grace Colored School was sold and turned into a doctor's office.
The Hirsch family graciously gifted this school to us. It was placed up for sale, and we came together as a team and said we have to do something to save this school.
The community came together, and in about 2 months, they raised the $153,000 needed to save the school.
The next phase, we want to make this into a museum and a cultural center so that the community can come and really take advantage of this wonderful space.
When we come back, we'll see how one Maryland hockey team turned a racially charged atmosphere into one of love.
One young hockey player in Anne Arundel County knows what it's like to feel hate, but he also knows what it's like to feel love. After he was attacked because of the color of his skin, his team and his community helped rally around him. WMAR 2 News' Sean Stepner shows how one team is help bridging the gap.
Standing almost 6 feet tall, Divine Apollon II rises above everyone on his hockey team. On the ice, he's always been the biggest. Most times, he's the strongest. At a recent tournament, it took all of his strength to be the bigger man.
I knew it was something that's going to happen at some point, but I didn't think it was going to happen this early.
Divine was targeted because of his race.
As it got closer to the middle of the game where it was kind of tied up and everything like that, that's when I heard the monkey noises.
Taunted with monkey noises while playing a team from Pennsylvania. It wasn't the first time for the 13-year-old defenseman.
A week before that, we were playing a team from Hagerstown, and that's where my dad was saying that he heard the N-word and the chance about getting off the ice and playing basketball.
I had to take a second to calm myself down. I went to the bathroom, put some water on my face, I had to recollect myself. Because being a black player myself, I grew up having things like this happen to me.
Divine wouldn't let the negativity get to him.
Because I know they're doing it just to get in my head and try and seem like they're the better player even though they're not, because they're doing those things. So I sort of just brush it off and try and keep on going.
As he kept going, skating stride by stride, his team rallied, slogan by slogan.
I just thought we have to do something more than say, this is so awful, we're sorry this happened.
Divine suits up for the Metro Maple Leafs 14 and under team. They skate out of Piney Orchard Ice Arena in Odenton. Tammy Lynch is the mom of one of his teammates. When she went back to her Ellicott City home after the game, she came up with a design. Hockey greater than hate. T-shirts were made. Stickers and buttons too, which were put on the players' helmets and sticks for the next game.
When Divine and his dad walked into the game that night, the look on their faces was...
And I was like, wow. And I looked up and the parents were sitting up to me. They all had them on their chest. I was like, oh, I was really shocked. That's okay. That's great. I appreciate that.
On the ice, Divine's team had his back. Off the ice, the Stanley Cup champs did too, extending a special invite. The Washington Capitals had the team to a game, inviting them inside the post-game locker room where Divine met his favorite player, Alex Ovechkin. He even got a signed stick from the Caps captain.
What did he say to you?
He said, hope you guys do good, and he gave me the stick.
And Divine had some words for the kids who taunted him.
Well, I guess they're pretty angry at home right now because they didn't get to meet OV because of their actions.
Taking a page out of the Caps playbook, Divine's Maple Leafs team has started giving back to the community.
Let's have some fun.
Each Saturday and some Sundays, they make their way to Patterson Park Ice Rink in Baltimore City to volunteer, teaching kids how to skate. They even scrimmaged the Baltimore Banners, a team made up of kids from East Baltimore.
Feels pretty good because it's an all-black team. It doesn't really get to play anybody.
Today, I'm honored to go against them. And to see him and what he going through against us, that's everything for real. This is show a statement, we who we are. We can do what we want.
Hockey is greater than hate. Sports supersedes racial animosity.
I like it.
Team tops prejudice every time. Divine Apollon II rises above the hate. He rises above the racism. His message?
To do the right thing and not to really be mean about it, to use those racial things, and if you enjoy the game, just keep on playing.
History shows that faith in the African-American community has been a cornerstone. As a matter of fact, it's one that has been a pillar of the community, and it actually brings people together during times of injustice. Bishop Walter Thomas Sr. pastors one of the largest churches in the Baltimore area, and he's actually using his faith to help bridge the gap.
Don't back down now. You've come too far. You're too close to your deliverance.
Our parents were parents of the struggle. They were parents who had grown up with hardcore discrimination and segregation. And we were the first generation walking in integration. And so we wanted more. We wanted more. And somehow I found it in that church.
As a child, Bishop Walter Scott Thomas says becoming a pastor never crossed his mind. He thought his love for math and science would lead him to help people along a different path.
And economics seemed to bring it all together. It brought the math, it brought the science, it brought theory, it brought practicality, and it brought human behavior.
Having graduated from the University of Maryland, Bishop Thomas was settling into his career when a neighborhood friend invited him to church. It ultimately redirected his entire life.
But what I found at New Shiloh Baptist Church was that the problem was more primal than behavior. The problem was the intent of persons' hearts. And that's what led me from a career in economics to ministry. Oh, family is the bedrock. I grew up with a small family. It was my mother, my father, my brother, and myself. Just the four of us in our little house in Cherry Hill. We did things together. So I brought that into my adult life. I brought that into the life I have with my wife and children, that we are a contained unit.
When I was born, USAMAS is on Franklin Cathedral. And every now and then when I go in the sanctuary here on 6020 Marion Drive, I'm in awe of just how far New Psalmist has come.
So the best part of pastoring New Psalmist is the journey. It's never where we are, it's always where we're going. In mindfulness of where we've been, tracking the distance and watching people change and grow, watching people have aha moments, watching people find their purpose in life.
While the city has gone through seasons of extreme violence, Bishop Thomas has always found a way to be a voice of peace in Baltimore.
With a city that has so much struggle, the church doing what it can, where it can, begins to start having folk come to it. The need to develop trust among the various elements of society is greater than ever before.
Bishop Thomas has a vision for his church and the community, and isn't slowing down, yet instead, he's living a life that will lead to the legacy he desires.
And I would want to be remembered as somebody who folk would say, he really believed it, and he really did it, and we saw it come to pass in our presence.
When we come back, we'll show you how Bowie State University is bridging the gap in the sciences. Bowie State University was the first historically black college built here in Maryland, and it's actually one of the 10 oldest in the country.
With such a rich history, Bowie is looking ahead and leading the charge in bridging the gap in many areas, but specifically the sciences, where minorities are currently underrepresented.
I think the first thing Bowie did was recruit young African-American women in science that have different fields of research, and that way we're able to reach the students. Most of our students come in wanting to go to medical school. So this shows them that you can stay in science and do something other than become a medical doctor.
So I study skeletal muscle aging. So as we get older, our muscles get smaller and weaker. And I'm trying to figure out if we can find a molecule that will inhibit it or at least slow it down.
Dr. Burks joined the staff in 2016 and has seen how new facilities and labs have made a large impact on our students.
Once they moved here, we had more space, better equipment, more equipment, and we were able to include more students in our research because of the space.
I just love Bowie State. I love the atmosphere. I really like the faculty. I'm so appreciative of the faculty and how much they helped me learn and grow. History of Bowie State University and how it founded in 1865 and how now in 2019, how much it's grown and how better it has gotten.
Bowie State is preparing the next generation of scientists and doctors, all while maintaining traditions and building a village of support for its students.
I want to get my PhD in genetic and molecular biology, and I really want to do a mentoring program with other students who are African American and from like middle school to high school who want to be scientists or doctors, and I just want to be a well-rounded role model for young students.
And that family atmosphere doesn't go away after graduation. Some students even come back to continue their research and give back to Bowie at the same time.
I graduated in the spring of 2018. I am currently working with Dr. Uday as a research assistant as well as his lab assistant as well. I'm still a little bit undecided about my graduate program, so being involved in lab and running some of the labs as well as doing some of the research, it's kind of helping me to narrow down what I really want to do as for my grad degree.
I think that education at the undergraduate level is very comparable to most universities, but it's the caring faculty that we have here that sets it apart. I come back to tell students, if I can, so can you. And if you follow my example or let me help you, we'll all get there.
Thank you for joining us on the beautiful campus of Bowie State University. We hope you're inspired by the unsung heroes.
Yeah, they're using their lives and experiences to help bridge the gap, and we want to remind you to ask yourself from time to time, what will I do to help bridge the gap? Have a good one.